Dear friends and members of the association, this is Luciano. Today I am on Hill 720. Many of you already know this place and its memory plaque behind me. This place is the ideal center of the 5th Special Service Force battlefields on the Winterline campaign. In fact, we are halfway between La Defensa to the south and Monte Maio to the north. Today, my duty is to try to explain the environmental and the landscapes reasons that made this area so important for the Germans and so hard for the Allied to conquer. First of all, let's analyze which was the situation around here. The 5th Army was pushing from south to try to cross this mountain and conquer the Liri Valley and the Highway 6 in it. The Highway 6 was the only way to move the big part of the troops quickly from Naples to Rome. That was the reason they needed to conquer this area. From here you can easily see how these mountains that surround the Liri Valley control the Liri Valley and the Mignano Gap. From the south, the Mignano Gap is really a bottleneck where the Highway 6 goes in, and it was the only way to pass. From all this mountain around, the German can see everything, from here to the south. About the landscapes reason of this area that made this area important, first of all we can see which were the common features that this area had. First of all, as you can see around me, this area is very rocky. All these mountains, from La Defensa to Monte Maio, are made by limestones. There is less vegetation on these rocks, and in the past it was worse. These kind of rocks are really sharp and sometimes are really hard to move on. Many veterans remember that when they explode, these rocks explode with the explosion of the bombs or during the assault, the fragments were dangerous as the fragments of the bombs. So this is the first environmental reason of the hardness of this area, the kind of stones, how they are made. The second reason is their shape, how their feathers are made, or the mountains are made. So the shape of these mountains, as you can see, are typical with the steep slopes, and sometimes the ridge seems to be like razor's blades with the two sides very steep and a ridge on top where the German placed their defense position. These kind of slopes were hard to afford, especially during the assault, because of the rocks. The rocks were sometimes really slippery for the well when they get wet, but also because the Germans placed their defense inside the natural shapes of the mountains and was using the natural stones on the mountains. So sometimes, often, the German positions were completely hid to the view of the observer, and you don't understand you were in front of a German position since you receive fire from it. Talking about Hill 720, where we are, Hill 720, it's a small hill. Its name, 720, it means how many meters upper the sea level it is. It's 720 meters upper the sea level in this area. It's a small hill related to the other mountains around. If you mind that Sammucro behind me, it's 1,200 meters high. La Defensa, it's close to 1,000 meters high. Monte Maio, it's 1,200 meters high. So this is a small hill. But why it was so important and why it was so hard to conquer? First of all, you must mind that during the assault of this area, the 36th Division and the Allied troops already taken the San Pietro area and the top of Sammucro. From these hills, the Germans, with the mortars and heavy mortars crew, continued to shell San Pietro Infine and the area where the Allied troops were. The 36th Division tried for first to take these hills, but without success, because they tried to conquer it from the south. 720, it's a ridge that goes from east to west, with the two sides, north and south, very steep, and sometimes with the mountain cliffs. The 36th Division wasn't able to do this kind of warfare. So that was another mission for the 5th Special Service Force, totally trained for the mountain warfare and especially for infiltration in hard areas. The decision to come from the top of Sammucro came from two reasons. First of all, since the top, the troops were covered by the presence of other soldiers, and they can trust the protection of the other units on the sides. So the 5th Special Service Force was able to climb the mountain without risk. There was a good supply route from the bottom of the mountain to the top, and then they had to come down from the Sammucro directly to the Hill 720 using the region behind me. So what you see behind me, it's the original way they took to reach this area. As you can see, it's completely uncovered. The German could see everything from their position to here. So the decision was to make a night assault, like the Defensa 1, because the 5th Special Service Force was trained for that. And the decision was to make an assault that will start early in the morning of the 25th of December. Why that? Because in that moment, the sunshine will start coming up from behind them. The east is behind me, so the top of the mountain will make a shade on all the area. So the Germans will find the soldiers in front of them with the sun in their eyes, and at the same time with the shade of covering the troops moving forward. The assault was made relatively quickly. In a few hours, the hill was conquered. In this way, the German mortar were silenced. After the Battle of Hill 720, the troops moved back in backline position in San Pietro and Venafro, and then they moved forward again to La Radicosa village. La Radicosa village, it's a small place 2 kilometers from here to the north, and it was chosen as a forward command post for the 5th Special Service Force. Why they decided to place their command post in that village? For two reasons, mainly. First of all, this village is protected among the hills around it. So this small village can be used as a safe place to organize rest camps and supply depot. Second, from La Radicosa, there is a good trail that directly links La Radicosa village to Venafro, to the back lines of the 5th Army. And that was important to ensure communication connection and supply connection. From that trail, everything moved up and down to keep the connection alive. The building used as a command post was one of the biggest in the village, and from there it was possible to check the connection to the Moscuso Gap. Of course, the 5th Special Service Force had to ensure the area before to place the command post in the La Radicosa. In fact, other battles occurred on the hills around the La Radicosa. For example, Chocolate Knob, it's one of the hills where the force had to silence a German machine gun. The same happened a little bit north on Monte Arcalone. They needed to conquer these hills to be sure that the area was safe, with no German patrols, with no German mortars. So that area became a safe place for the 5th Special Service Force. From La Radicosa, the next step was to try to go to Cassino, to cross the mountains of Monte Maio and to go to Cassino. The objective was always the same: ensure the top of the mountains where the Germans can see everything. As I told you, the Liri Valley, the total Liri Valley, it's completely seen from the top of these mountains. From here you can see easily the landscapes from Mignano to Cassino, and the same did the Germans. That's the decision for the Germans to place the observer point on these mountains. To conquer Monte Maio, the Maio Massif, because Maio it's a massif made with different hills, different high spots, starting from Colle Stefano to Monte Maio, Colle Aquilone and Colle Vischiataro. To conquer Monte Maio was necessary to conquer all these high spots. Every spot for the German was a machine gun nest or a mortar emplacement, and these spots were interconnected by gullies or ridges. Sometimes between the spots there were minefields. Another problem to reach the area of Monte Maio was the supply routes. The main trails were under the German control, so the force had to use small trails, sometimes just mule trails. Sometimes they had to bring on their shoulder everything they needed. Another problem that occurred on the assault of Monte Maio was that at the beginning of January 44, it started to snow in this area. This area normally in the winter time it's covered by snow. And so what happened that during the first wave of the assault started to snow, and so the snow covered the mountain, and that became a problem for the supplies and a problem for the assault, because on the snow the people are easy, it's possible to see easier the peoples. Anyway, the assault to Monte Maio was accomplished. After the assault of Monte Maio, the next step was to ensure the area, so clean all the path, all the trail, to use them to supply the troops that was going forward, and go to, on the other side of the mountain, on the north side of the mountain, to Cervaro, moving through the Vallone Ascensione trail. Vallone Ascensione trail, it's a Roman trail that starts from Cervaro and goes up to Valle Vecchia between Colle Aquilone and Monte Vischiadaro, two important battlefields for the force, and then continue to Forcella di Cervaro, and from here it's possible to come here to La Radicosa. All this trail was one of the supply routes for the army that were fighting in that area. That was the last mission in this area for the 5th Special Service Force. In fact, after that, they were moved to Anzio for other kind of battlefields. So, to resume a while everything. First of all, the landscapes of this area, it's made to control the valley below. And this is something that happened since the old time. Even the Samnite made defense position up there to protect their cities and their farms from the Romans. The mountains are made with a kind of stone, a kind of limestone, that it's very slippery when it gets wet. It's very dangerous to run up there. It became dangerous when they broke in fragments, very sharp fragments, with explosion or with destruction for the battles. Third, the Germans were interconnected among them, so they can see each high spot from the other, and their position, their bunkers were really well made to resist, to be hide, to use the shape of the mountain and the stones of the mountain, so in this way was really invisible to the normal view of the soldiers. After the battles in this area, the winter line was crossed, and so the 5th Army was able to continue their movement with the big part of the troops through the Liri Valley, the Highway 6, and they start to approach Cassino and the Gustav Line. I grew up on these mountains with my friends. Many of you already know what my passion is. I started when I was 12 to study this kind of battlefields, to search stuff on these battlefields. And with my friends, we made a museum, the Winterline Venafro Museum, to preserve the memory of all the soldiers that fallen on these mountains. We tried to collect everything was possible to collect, and we made many dioramas in our museum to tell the stories. Of course, our duty is to keep the memory alive. I usually say that we have the places, we have the stuff, but you have the stories. Your relatives are linked with the stories of your grandfathers, your great-grandfathers. Together, we can keep the memory alive of what happened up here. The sacrifice of many men up there to preserve the liberty, the freedom of our country. Our museum is honored to have a section dedicated to the Free Special Service Force. That corner, it's a memory place for every one of you that wants to come back and see what happened on this mountain. Keep safe, hope to see you soon, and go on with the association, and see you next time in Italy. Bye.